Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are taking a look at a pair of Chinese submachine guns. These are both Type 85s. That's a regular Type 85, and this is the integrally suppressed version of the Type 85. Now, normally I try to give you a good background on the history and the development and where guns came from. Today, I really wasn't able to find any of that information on the Type 85 at all. Hey, future Ian here. I need to interject for just a moment. You may recall a little while ago I had a video on the Type 79 submachine gun, which I coordinated with Jason Clower, who is the man behind the YouTube channel Type 56, The Story of China's Army. Well, we're doing the same thing again today, because I have access to this pair of Type 85 submachine guns, but I don't know anything about the development and the background. I just don't have that level of knowledge into the PLA, the People's Liberation Army in China. But Jason Clower does, and he has an entire YouTube channel that is a university course on the PLA's adoption of the Type 56 and why they stuck with it in the face of what seemed like a whole lot of better options for a long time. So today's video is coordinated with his video on the Type 85 machine gun. I've linked to it down in the description text. You should definitely go check it out to get the developmental, political, military background on where the Type 85 came from and what the Chinese thought of it. So now let's get back to disassembly of these two so you have a better idea what the gun is that he's talking about. What I can tell you is that it was sort of a reaction to the Type 79 submachine guns, which they're like miniature AKs. They're short stroke gas piston operated rotating locking bolt, way overly complex. And this pushes back in exactly the opposite direction, perhaps a little too far, like the pendulum swung back a little too far the other direction. These are simple blowback, like really, really simply manufactured. And I think some of the elements in these guns are a little too crude and too cheap. But that's about all I know for the background of these. So instead of being able to tell you that, I'm giving you two versions of the gun today. So let's take a look at this, and then we're going to pull apart the suppressed one so I can show you all the internals, because there is some cool stuff in there. The Type 85 is really a very compact, I mean, you could say adorably petite submachine gun. Just for comparison's sake, there's a CZ75. Like, this is not that far off. We have an 8 1/4 inch barrel. It's, I think, 207 millimeters on the barrel. Weight on this is 4.2 pounds. It's 1.9 kilograms. So it's light, it's very compact, it's very small. It is chambered for 7.62 by 25 millimeter Tokarev. Uses a nose-in rockback 30-round magazine. Obviously, you can see a bit reminiscent of an AK magazine. The locking section at the front, locking tab at the rear. I've got the stock folded to the side here. In order to open it, you just push down on the locking button. That allows it to pivot out and snap into place. These do have a semi-automatic function, so we have a 3-position selector here. 1 is semi, 0 is safe, and 2 is full auto. So in both full and semi-auto, they do fire from an open bolt, so that's where you lock the bolt open. One interesting element here that's a little different from something I've seen on any other submachine gun is there is a hole in the opposite side of the receiver, and you can actually use the charging handle to lock the bolt in the forward position. Now, that by itself is not particularly unique. The Sten gun introduced that. But the way that it works here is the charging handle is actually spring-loaded. What you do is push it through, rotate it 90 degrees, and that locks it in place. And in order to unlock it, you have to push it in again, rotate it another 90 degrees, and then it opens up. So that's kind of a cool development. One of the issues with this sort of system on guns like the Sten is when the bolt's forward, depending on the design, it's sometimes possible to accidentally bump the charging handle, and it goes in just a little bit, locks in place, and it's not immediately obvious that the gun is locked in the safe position. And so if you decide you need to shoot, you go to fire, well, you're not going to notice that the gun's locked open, and it's not great. Anyway, other than that selector, the only markings here are a factory code and the model designation. So 85, not sure exactly what Q stands for, but the Q model is this unsuppressed sort of standard submachine gun one. Front sight is very AK-like. Rear sight is a pretty typical submachine gun type of thing. You have two open notches that you can flip back and forth between, but they're both just small little rectangular notches. Oh, and we have our serial number here on the side of the magazine well. Now, the 85W is the integrally suppressed version. It is basically the same from here backwards, same 30 round mags. We do have this optic mounting dovetail spot welded to the top of the gun. The front sight is the same, essentially the same style, welded onto the front of the suppressor, but in order to have the drum in here and make it both windage and elevation adjustable for zeroing, this sight ends up being a little bit taller than the one on the standard gun. And so as a result, the rear sight is made a little bit taller as well. And you can see that a little better when you look at them side by side like that. And the suppressed version here is intended to use a special subsonic loading of 7.62 Tokarev. It's a 120 grain bullet instead of the standard 85 grain bullet, and traveling at 950 to 1,000 feet per second, or just below the speed of sound. All right, let's start with disassembly at the back end. This is identical on the suppressed version as well as the standard version. So first thing I'm going to do is take out this little split pin right there. This is one of those pins that's really, it's hard to get your fingers on because it's small, it's sharp. This is one of the areas where I think they cheaped out a bit too much. I'm gonna just tap that out with a plastic screwdriver handle. And we pop that out, and you can see like there's not a lot of spring to that. This could be, you know, you wouldn't have to spend much more money to make this a much more user-friendly piece to disassemble. With that pin out, the grip assembly rotates down, rotate it down 90 degrees, and then it disengages from this pair of lugs at the front. You just have these oblong holes, so they'll connect like that, and then when you rotate it up, they lock in place. That's clever, simple, and efficient. Inside here is a pretty basic trigger assembly, disconnector, sear, nothing real fancy going on there. And the back end is just empty, except for a screw that holds on the pistol grip. Now to open up the receiver, we have like the HK push pin that we've got at home. This is, again, it's really tight in the gun, it's sharp, it's just not very user-friendly. So I'm gonna pop it out there again with a plastic screwdriver handle, and then, all right, we pull that out, and then we can remove the rear plug of the receiver. So this is just a round socket, holds the butt stock. The recoil spring is the full diameter of the receiver tube, which is great. This sort of spring can't actually kink up when you're trying to put it back in because, well, it's the full diameter of the receiver tube. Next up, we can pull this back, and then the charging handle just kind of pops out because it's spring-loaded there. And then the bolt comes out. So very simple bolt. It's got a fixed firing pin, nothing but mass here, simple blowback, open bolt firing. That's all you got going on for the bolt. And that takes us to the suppressor. So there's some cool stuff going on inside here as well. The suppressor, the end cap here is left-hand threaded. So I'm gonna unscrew this. There we go, that comes off. Then they carried over an element from the Type 79 that I think is really cool, and that is this sort of self-contained baffle stack. So the way this works is you actually have a pull handle on the front that has two rods connected to it, and you can see them right down there, and then each of the baffles has two sort of keyhole slots in it that lock into, well, sorry, the bottom baffle has keyholes to lock it in place. The regular baffles just have regular holes. So you can stack all of these up very easily on the guide rods. These are all the same. They're very simple, almost certainly stamped baffles. But what this allows you to do is pull the whole thing out as a unit, rather than trying to, balance and thread baffles back into the can when you reassemble the thing. So that goes on like that, rotates in place, and that's the baffle stack. Now the last bit of disassembly here is to pull off the actual suppressor shroud. So to do that, I'm going to pull this locking tab back. It's kind of almost back already. But we pull that back, and then this is also left-hand threaded. So I unscrew this, and pull that off, and inside we have a perforated barrel. We have the regular barrel, and there's actually more more solid barrel than you normally get with the sort of telescoping integrated suppressors. Normally you just have like 2 or 3 inches of barrel in a gun like this. Here we've got, looks like 5 or maybe even 6 inches of fixed barrel before you get to the perforated section. This tube is completely hollow with the exception of a fixed, basically a fixed wall right down in there. So that is what the baffles stop against, and that's located right here. So if we line this up the way it's actually assembled when it's all put together, you essentially have this, where this is a big open expansion chamber. This is also open, and the wall between them is this perforated piece right here. So when you fire, the bullet's going to accelerate through here. Once it gets to this point, gas starts venting into this chamber. It will vent backwards. It'll expand backwards into this whole area. That gives it a lot of space to cool down and expand before it is also forced out the front through each of these baffles in turn and out the front of the suppressor. So it's a simple system, but it gives you a pretty large suppressor volume. Easy to disassemble, easy to manufacture. It's a pretty cool system. I wish I knew exactly how quiet it was. I haven't seen any data for these actually run through sound testing, unfortunately. All right, so there's the whole suppressed Type 85 field stripped, and if you leave out like this section of it, it's the same as a regular Type 85 field stripped. If I had a nickel for every time the Chinese manufactured an integrally suppressed version of a regular submachine gun, I'd have like 3 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's kind of weird that it happens that many times. It's like, it really isn't that many different examples of guns, but it seems like the Chinese are more interested in doing integrally suppressed versions of this sort of thing than a lot of other countries out there. Like, we don't see HK and FN and CZ offering like factory integrally suppressed versions of things like the USC or the Scorpion 3 or, you know, any of the other new Western submachine guns out there. So anyway, I thought it was really interesting to take a look at these to see how the design philosophy shifted back from the overly complicated Type 79s. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video as well. Thanks for watching.